Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books here at Live Studio Govardhan in my room in ISKCON Bhaktivedanta Ashram, just across the street from the Govardhan hill that Krishna lifted while he was here on the earth 5,000 years ago. And I'm here with Bhakta Matt, and we're waiting for Vilas Manjari, who's from Australia, and she's just wrote me a note and asked me if she could come to the reading. She may be a little late, but anyway, she's an avid follower of this group, and I must say that it's pretty enlivening to actually see the practical results of live streaming Srila Prabhupada all over the world in this very intimate setting and in this intimate way. If we just read Srila Prabhupada's books out loud in order to associate with him, we automatically get to associate with all the exalted personalities of the history of the universe, the most important persons in the history of the universe. And we get to learn so much, we get edification by their association. We learn how to deal with one another, how to deal with all the different complexities of life in this material world in a way that keeps us on track for going back to Godhead. So this is a great gift. All right, so let's start. We're going to read, as usual, the wonderful prayer that Sanatana Goswami composed, glorifying the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. And it goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshak Sharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Man Mahadana Mandishtadagamad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin adini chochata kada hanamunchagadachin mam premnarit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So, we've reached the 15th chapter of the 3rd canto, Srimad-Bhagavatam. Maitreya has just explained the glories of Vaikuntha, a description of Vaikuntha. And this is a prelude for the entrance into Vaikuntha of the four Kumaras. And this will start the saga of the appearance of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Hare Krishna, come in. Your seat's waiting for you. You got a box seat due to your dedication. This is Bhakta Nat. This is Vilas Manjari.
I've heard so much about you, Bhakta Nat. I hear your name a lot.
Well, Vilas Manjari has just arrived from where? Sydney?
Yes.
From Sydney. She's attending the Hariman Nam retreat in the other side of Govardhan in Yatipur. Please have your seats.
Thank you.
Make yourself comfortable. You're just here at the beginning. You didn't miss hardly anything.
Oh, wonderful. Because I've missed a few days because I've been travelling.
I see.
So I haven't been able to keep up. Because I haven't had the internet.
Well, we were just talking about this, how enlivening it is to know that what we're doing is reaching devotees, all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
A friend of mine, Helena, and I watch every night. And the only time we don't watch is when we go away on a holiday and we don't have internet. And we both feel like we missed 5 days and yeah, we miss it.
Okay,
so,
good.
Yeah.
You're just coming in at the right time.
In fact, it's strange for me to see you live. Because I'm so used to seeing you in the...
Yeah. Anyway, this is a nice place to hear. You can take in the room while you're here. All right, here we are. We're starting with chapter 26. We've heard Maitreya Muni's description of Vaikuntha. And now, enter stage, left or right, I don't know which side, but anyway, enter the four Kumaras. Here we go. Chapter 15, Canto 3, chapter 26. Thus the great sages, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara, upon reaching the above-mentioned Vaikuntha in the spiritual world, by dint of their mystic yoga performance, perceived unprecedented happiness. They found that the spiritual sky was illuminated by highly decorated airplanes, piloted by the best devotees of Vaikuntha, and was predominated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one without a second. He is above everyone. No one is equal to him, nor is anyone greater than him. Therefore he is described here as Vishwaguru. He is the prime living entity of the entire material and spiritual creation, and is Bhuvanaika Vandyam, the only worshipable personality in the three worlds. The airplanes in the spiritual sky are self-illuminated and are piloted by great devotees of the Lord. In other words, in the Vaikuntha planets, there is no scarcity of the things which are available in the material world. They are available, but they are more valuable because they are spiritual and therefore eternal and blissful. The sages felt an unprecedented happiness because Vaikuntha was not predominated by an ordinary man. The Vaikuntha planets are predominated by expansions of Krishna, who were differently named as Madhusudana, Madhava, Narayana, Pradyumna, etc. These transcendental planets are worshipable because the personality of Godhead personally rules them. It is said here that the sages reached the transcendental spiritual sky by dint of their mystic power. That is the perfection of the yoga system. The breathing exercises and disciplines to keep health in proper order are not the ultimate goals of yoga perfection. The yoga system, as generally understood, is Ashtanga Yoga, or Siddhi, eightfold perfection in yoga. By dint of perfection in yoga, one can become lighter than the lightest and heavier than the heaviest. One can go wherever he likes and can achieve opulence as he likes. There are 8 such perfections. The rishis, the 4 kumaras, reached Vaikuntha by becoming lighter than the lightest, and thus passing over the space of the material world. Modern mechanical space vehicles are unsuccessful because they cannot go to the highest region of the material creation, and they certainly cannot enter the spiritual sky. But by perfection of the yoga system, one can not only travel through the material space, but can surpass material space and enter the spiritual sky. We learn this fact also from an incident concerning Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish. It is understood that in 1 year Durvasa Muni traveled everywhere and went into the spiritual sky to meet the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. By present standards, scientists calculate that if one could travel at the speed of light, it would take 40,000 years to reach the highest planet of this material world. But the yoga system can carry one without limitation or difficulty. The word Yogamaya is used in this verse. Yogamaya balena vaikuntam. The transcendental happiness exhibited in the spiritual world and all other spiritual manifestations there are made possible by the influence of Yogamaya, the internal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 27. After passing through the 6 entrances of Vaikuntha Puri, the Lord's residence, without feeling astonishment at all the decorations, they saw at the 7th gate 2 shining beings of the same age, armed with maces and adorned with most valuable jewelry, earrings, diamonds, helmets, garments, etc. Purport. The sages were so eager to see the Lord within Vaikuntha Puri that they did not care to see the transcendental decorations of the 6 gates which they passed by one after another. But at the 7th door, they found 2 doormen of the same age. The significance of the doormen being of the same age is that in the Vaikuntha planets there is no old age. So one cannot distinguish who is older than whom. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha are decorated like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, with Shankha, Chakra, Gada, and Padma, conch, wheel, club, and lotus. Text 28. The 2 doormen were garlanded with fresh flowers, which attracted intoxicated bees, and which were placed around their necks and between their 4 blue arms. From their arched eyebrows, discontented nostrils, and reddish eyes, they appeared somewhat agitated. Purport. Their garlands attracted swarms of bees because they were garlands of fresh flowers. In the Vaikuntha world, everything is fresh, new, and transcendental. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha have bodies of bluish color and 4 hands like Narayana. Text 29. The great sages, headed by Sanaka, had opened doors everywhere. They had no idea of ours and theirs. With open minds, they entered the 7th door out of their own will, just as they had passed through the 6 other doors, which were all made of gold and diamonds. Purport. The great sages, namely Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara, although very old in years, maintained themselves eternally as small children. They were not at all duplicitous, and they entered the doors exactly as little children enter places without any idea of what it is to trespass. That is a child's nature. A child can enter any place and no one checks him. Indeed, a child is generally welcome in his attempts to go places, but if it so happens that a child is checked from entering a door, he naturally becomes very sorry and angry. That is the nature of a child. In this case, the same thing happened. The childlike saintly personalities entered all the 6 doors of the palace, and no one checked them. Therefore, when they attempted to enter the 7th door and were forbidden by the doormen who checked them, with their sticks, they naturally became very angry and sorrowful. An ordinary child would cry, but because these were not ordinary children, they immediately made preparations to punish the doorman, for the doorman had committed a great offense. Even to this day, a saintly person is never checked from entering anyone's door in India. 30. The 4 boy sages, who had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere, looked only 5 years old, and even though they were the oldest of all living creatures and had realized the truth of the self, the four boy sages who had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere looked only 5 years old, even though they were the oldest of all living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. But when the porters, who happened to possess a disposition quite unpalatable to the Lord, saw the sages, they blocked their way with their staffs, despising their glories, although the sages did not deserve such treatment at their hands. Purport. The 4 sages were the first-born sons of Brahma. Therefore, all other living entities, including Lord Shiva, are born later and are therefore younger than the 4 Kumaras. Although they looked like 5-year-old boys and traveled naked, the Kumaras were older than all other living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. Such saints were not to be forbidden to enter the kingdom of Vaikuntha, but by chance the doormen objected to their entrance. This was not fitting. The Lord is always anxious to serve sages like the Kumaras, but in spite of knowing this fact, the doormen astonishingly and outrageously prohibited them from entering. Text 31. When the Kumaras, although by far the fittest persons, were thus forbidden entrance by the 2 chief doorkeepers of Sri Hari, while other divinities looked on, their eyes suddenly turned red because of anger, due to their great eagerness to see their beloved master, Sri Hari, the personality of Godhead. Purport. According to the Vedic system, a sannyasi, a person in the renounced order of life, is dressed in saffron-colored garments. This saffron dress is practically a passport for the mendicant and the sannyasi to go anywhere. The sannyasi's duty is to enlighten people in Krishna consciousness. Those in the renounced order of life have no other business but preaching the glories and supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Vedic sociological conception is that a sannyasi should not be restricted. He is allowed to go anywhere and everywhere he wants, and he is not refused any gift he might demand from a householder. The 4 Kumaras came to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. The word Suritama, best of all friends, is important. As Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, he is the best friend of all living entities. Suridam Sarvabhutanam. No one can be a greater well-wishing friend to any living entity than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is so kindly disposed towards everyone that in spite of our completely forgetting our relationship with the Supreme Lord, he comes himself, sometimes personally, as Lord Krishna appeared on this earth, and sometimes as his devotee, as did Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And sometimes he sends his bona fide devotees to reclaim all the fallen souls. Therefore, he is the greatest well-wishing friend of everyone, and the Kumaras wanted to see him. The doorkeepers should have known that the 4 sages had no other business, and therefore to restrict them from entering the palace was not apt. In this verse it is figuratively stated that the younger brother of desire suddenly appeared in person when the sages were forbidden to see their most beloved personality of Godhead. The younger brother of desire is anger. If one's desire is not fulfilled, the younger brother, anger, follows. Here we can mark that even great saintly persons like the Kumaras were also angry, but they were not angry for their personal interests. They were angry because they were forbidden to enter the palace to see the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the theory that in the perfectional stage one should not have anger is not supported in this verse. Anger will continue even in the liberated stage. These four mendicant brothers, the Kumaras, were considered liberated persons, but still they were angry because they were restricted in their service to the Lord. The difference between the anger of an ordinary person and that of a liberated person is that an ordinary person becomes angry because his sense desires are not fulfilled, whereas a liberated person like the Kumaras becomes angry. A liberated person like the Kumaras becomes angry when restricted in the discharge of duties for serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the previous verse, it has been clearly mentioned that the Kumaras were liberated persons. Viditatma tattva means one who understands the truth of self-realization. One who does not understand the truth of self-realization is called ignorant. But one who understands the self, the super-self, their interrelation, and activities in self-realization is called Viditatma tattva. Although the Kumaras were already liberated persons, they nevertheless became angry. This point is very important. Becoming liberated does not necessitate losing one's sensual activities. Sense activities continue even in the liberated stage. The difference is, however, that sense activities in liberation are accepted only in connection with Krishna consciousness, whereas sense activities in the conditioned stage are enacted for personal sense gratification. Text 32. The sages said, "Who are these two persons who have developed such a discordant mentality, even though they are posted in the service of the Lord in the highest position and are expected to have developed the same qualities as the Lord? How are these two persons living in Vaikuntha? Where's the possibility of an enemy's coming into this kingdom of God? The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no enemy. Who could be envious of him? Probably these two persons are impostors, therefore they suspect others to be like themselves." Purport. The difference between the inhabitants of a Vaikuntha planet and those of a material planet is that in Vaikuntha, all the residents engage in the service of the Lord himself and are equipped with all his good qualities. It has been analyzed by great personalities that when a conditioned soul is liberated and becomes a devotee, about 79% of all the good qualities of the Lord develop in his person. Therefore, in the Vaikuntha world, there is no question of enmity between the Lord and the residents. Here in this material world, the citizens may be inimical to the chief executives or heads of state, but in Vaikuntha, there is no such mentality. One is not allowed to enter Vaikuntha unless he has completely developed the good qualities. The basic principle of goodness is to accept subordination to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sages therefore were surprised to see that the two doormen who checked them from entering the palace were not exactly like the residents of Vaikuntha Loka. It may be said that a doorman's duty is to determine who should be allowed to enter the palace and who should not. But that is not relevant in this matter, because no one is allowed to enter the Vaikuntha planets unless he has developed 100% his mentality of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. No enemy of the Lord can enter Vaikuntha Loka. The Kumaras concluded that the only reason for the Dormans checking them was that the Dorman themselves were impostors. Text 33. In the Vaikuntha world, there is complete harmony between the residents and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and small skies. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but where from can their disharmony come into existence? Purport. Just as there are different departments in each state in this material world, the civil department and the criminal department, so in God's creation, there are two departments of existence. As in the material world, we can find that the criminal department is far, far smaller than the civil department. So this material world, which is considered the criminal department, is 1/4 of the entire creation of the Lord. All living entities who are residents of the material universes are considered to be more or less criminals because they do not wish to abide by the order of the Lord, or they are against the harmonious activities of God's will. The principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many in order to enhance his transcendental joy. The living entities like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in that harmony, immediately the living entity is entrapped by illusion, maya, or illusion. The external energy of the Lord is called the material world, and the kingdom of the internal energy of the Lord is called Vaikuntha, or the kingdom of God. In the Vaikuntha world, there is no disharmony between the Lord and the residents. Therefore, God's creation in the Vaikuntha world is perfect. There is no cause of fear. The entire kingdom of God is such a completely harmonious unit that there is no possibility of enmity. Everything there is absolute. Just as there are many physiological constructions within the body, yet they work in one order for the satisfaction of the stomach. And just as in a machine there are hundreds and thousands of parts, yet they run in harmony to fulfill the function of the machine. In the Vaikuntha planets, the Lord is perfect, and the inhabitants also perfectly engage in the service of the Lord. The Mayavadi philosophers, the impersonalists, interpret this verse of Srimad-Bhagavatam to mean that the small sky and the big sky are one. But this idea cannot stand. The example of the big sky and the small skies is also applicable within a person's body. The big sky is the body itself, and the intestines and other parts of the body occupy the small sky. Each and every part of the body has individuality, even though occupying a small part of the total body. Similarly, the whole creation is the body of the Supreme Lord, and we created beings, or anything that is created, are but a small part of that body. The parts of the body are never equal to the whole. This is never possible. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that the living entities who are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord are eternally parts and parcels. According to the Mayavadi philosophers, the living entity in illusion considers himself part and parcel, although he is actually one and the same as the supreme whole. This theory is not valid. The oneness of the whole and the part is in their quality. The qualitative oneness of the small and large portions of the sky does not imply that the small sky becomes the big sky. There is no cause for the politics that divide and rule in the Vaikuntha planets. There is no fear because of the united interests of the Lord and the residents. Maya means disharmony between the living entities and the Supreme Lord, and Vaikuntha means harmony between them. Actually, all living entities are provided for and maintained by the Lord because He is the supreme living entity. But foolish creatures, although actually under the control of the supreme living entity, defy His existence. And that state is called Maya. Sometimes they deny that there is such a being as God. They say everything is void. And sometimes they deny Him in a different way. There may be God, but He has no form. Both these conceptions arise from the rebellious condition of the living entity. As long as this rebellious condition prevails, the material world will continue in disharmony. Harmony or disharmony is realized because of the law and order of a particular place. Religion is the law and order of the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad-Bhagavatam, in the Srimad-Bhagavad Gita, we find that religion means devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Krishna says, give up all other religious principles and simply become a soul surrendered unto me. This is religion. When one is fully conscious that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and supreme Lord, and one acts accordingly, that is real religion. Anything which goes against this principle is not religion. Krishna therefore says, just give up all other religious principles. In the spiritual world, this religious principle of Krishna consciousness is maintained in harmony, and therefore that world is called Vaikuntha. If the same principles can be adopted here, wholly or partially, then it is also Vaikuntha. So it is with any society, such as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. If the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, putting faith in Krishna as the center, live in harmony according to the order and principles of Bhagavad Gita, they are living in Vaikuntha, not in this material world. Text 34. Therefore, let us consider how these two contaminated persons should be punished. The punishment should be apt, for thus benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them. Since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life, they are contaminated and should be removed from this place to the material world, where the living entities have three kinds of enemies. Purport. The reason why pure souls come into the existential circumstances of the material world, which is considered to be the criminal department of the Supreme Lord, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, verse 27. It is stated that as long as a living entity is pure, he is in complete harmony with the desires of the Supreme Lord. But as soon as he becomes impure, he is in disharmony with the desires of the Lord. By contamination, he is forced to transfer to this material world, where the living entities have three enemies, namely desire, anger, and lust. These three enemies force the living entities to continue material existence. And when one is free from them, he is eligible to enter the kingdom of God. One should not therefore be angry in the absence of an opportunity for sense gratification. And one should not be lusty to acquire more than necessary. In this verse, it is clearly stated that the two doormen should be sent into the material world where criminals are allowed to reside. Since the basic principles of criminality are sense gratification, anger, and unnecessary lust, persons conducted by these three enemies of a living entity are never promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. People should learn Bhagavad Gita and accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the Lord of everything. They should practice satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord instead of trying to satisfy their own senses. Training in Krishna consciousness will help one be promoted to Vaikuntha. Text 35. When the doormen of Vaikuntha Loka, who were certainly devotees of the Lord, found that they were going to be cursed by the Brahmanas, they at once became very much afraid and fell down at the feet of the Brahmanas in great anxiety. For a Brahmana's curse cannot be counteracted by any kind of weapon. Purport. Although by chance the doorman committed a mistake by checking the Brahmanas from entering the gate of Vaikuntha, they were at once aware of the gravity of the curse. There are many kinds of offenses, but the greatest offense is to offend a devotee of the Lord. Because the doormen were also devotees of the Lord, they were able to understand their mistake and were terrified when the four Kumaras were ready to curse them. Text 36. After being cursed by the sages, the doorman said, "It is quite apt that you have punished us for neglecting to respect sages like you, but we pray that due to your compassion at our repentance, the illusion of forgetting the Supreme Personality of Godhead will not come upon us as we go progressively downward." Purport. To a devotee, any heavy punishment is tolerable, but the one which affects forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord. The doormen, who were also devotees, could understand the punishment meted out to them, for they were conscious of the great offense they had committed by not allowing the sages to enter Vaikuntha Loka. In the lowest species of life, including the animal species, forgetfulness of the Lord is very prominent. The doormen were aware that they were going to be to the criminal department of the material world, and they expected that they might go to the lowest species, and forget the Supreme Lord. They prayed, therefore, that this might not happen in the lives they were going to accept because of the curse. In Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, verses 19 and 20, it is said that those who are envious of the Lord and His devotees are thrown into the species of abominable life after life. Such fools are unable to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore they continue going down and down. Text 37. At that very moment, the Lord, who was called Padmanabha because of the lotus grown from his navel, and who is the delight of the righteous, learned about the insult offered by his own servants to the saints. Accompanied by his spouse, the goddess of fortune, he went to the spot on those very feet sought for by recluses and great sages. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord declares that his devotees cannot be vanquished at any time. The Lord could understand that the quarrel between the doormen and the sages was taking a different turn, and therefore he instantly came out of his palace and went to the spot to stop further aggravation, so that his devotees, the doormen, might not be vanquished for good. Text 38. The sages, headed by Sanaka Rishi, saw that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who was formerly visible only within their hearts in ecstatic trance, had now actually become visible to their eyes. As he came forward, accompanied by his own associates, bearing all paraphernalia, such as an umbrella and a chamara fan, the white bunches of hair moved very gently, like two swans, and due to their favorable breeze, the pearls garlanding the umbrella also moved, like drops of nectar falling from the white full moon, or ice melting due to a gust of wind. Purport. In this verse we find the word achakshataksha vishayam. The Supreme Lord cannot be seen by ordinary eyes, but he now became visible to the eyesight of the Kumaras. Another significant word is samadhi bhagyam. Meditators who were very fortunate can see the Vishnu form of the Lord within their hearts by following the yogic process. But to see him face to face is a different matter. It is only possible for pure devotees. The Kumaras, therefore, upon seeing the Lord coming forward with his associates, the Kumaras, therefore, upon seeing the Lord coming forward with his associates, who were holding an umbrella and a chamara fan, were struck with wonder that they were seeing the Lord face to face. It is said in the Brahma Samhita that devotees, being elevated in love of God, always see Shyamasundar, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within their hearts. But when they are mature, the same God is visible before them, face to face. For ordinary persons, the Lord is not visible. However, when one can understand the significance of his holy name, and one engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, beginning with the tongue, by chanting and tasting prasad, then gradually the Lord reveals himself. Thus the devotee constantly sees the Lord within his heart, and in a more mature stage, one can see the Lord directly as we see everything else. Text 39. The Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure. His auspicious presence is meant for everyone's benediction, and his affectionate smiling and glancing touch the core of the heart. The Lord's beautiful bodily color is blackish, and his broad chest is the resting place of the goddess of fortune, who glorifies the entire spiritual world, the summit of all heavenly planets. Thus it appeared that the Lord was personally spreading the beauty and good fortune of the spiritual world. Purport. When the Lord came, he was pleased with everyone. Therefore it is stated here, Krishna Prasada Sumukham. The Lord knew that even the offensive doormen were his pure devotees, although by chance they committed an offense at the feet of other devotees. To commit an offense against a devotee is very dangerous in devotional service. Lord Chaitanya therefore said that an offense to a devotee is just like a mad elephant run loose. When a mad elephant enters a garden, it tramples all the plants. Similarly, An offense under the lotus feet of a pure devotee murders one's position in devotional service. On the part of the devotee, there was no offended mood because he does not accept any offense created by a sincere devotee. But a devotee should be very careful, very cautious of committing offenses at the feet of another devotee. The Lord, being equal to all, and being especially inclined to his devotee, looked as mercifully at the offenders as at the offended. This attitude of the Lord was due to his unlimited quantity of transcendental qualities. His cheerful attitude towards the devotees was so pleasing and heart-touching that his very smile was attractive for them. That attraction was glorious, not only for all the higher planets of this material world, but beyond, for the spiritual world also. Generally, a human being has no idea of what the constitutional position is in the higher material planets, which are far better constituted in regard to all paraphernalia. Yet the Vaikuntha planet is so pleasing and so celestial that it is compared to the middle jewel or locket in a necklace of jewels. In this verse, the words Sprihaniya Dhamma indicate that the Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure because he has all the transcendental qualities. Although only some of these are aspired for by persons who hanker after the pleasure of merging in the impersonal Brahman, there are other aspirants who want to associate with the Lord personally as his servants. The Lord is so kind that he gives shelter to everyone, both impersonalists and devotees. He gives shelter to the impersonalists in his impersonal Brahman effulgence, whereas he gives shelter to the devotees in his personal abodes, known as the Vaikuntha Lokas. He is especially inclined to his devotee. He touches the core of the heart of the devotee simply by smiling and glancing over him. The Lord is always served in the Vaikuntha Loka by many hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune, as stated by the Brahma Samhita, Lakshmi Sahasra Shatasam Brahma Sevyamanam. In this material world, one is glorified if he is favored even a pinch by the goddess of fortune. So we can simply imagine how glorified is the kingdom of God in the spiritual world, where many hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune engage in direct service of the Lord. Another feature of this verse is that it openly declares where the Vaikuntha Lokas are situated. They are situated as the summit of all the heavenly planets, which are above the sun globe at the upper limit of the universe, and are known as Satyaloka or Brahmaloka. The spiritual world is situated beyond the universe. Therefore it is stated here that the spiritual world, Vaikuntha Loka, is the summit of all planetary systems. Text 40. He was adorned with a girdle that shone brightly on the yellow cloth covering his large hips, and he wore a garland of fresh flowers, which was distinguished by humming bees. His lovely wrists were graced with bracelets, and he rested one of his hands on the shoulder of Garuda, his carrier, and twirled a lotus with the other hand. Purport. Here is a full description of the personality of Godhead as personally experienced by the sages. The Lord's personal body was covered with yellow robes, and his waist was thin. In Vaikuntha, whenever there is a flower garland on the chest of the personality of Godhead or any one of his associates, it is described that the humming bees are there. All these features were very beautiful and attractive for the devotees. One of the Lord's hands rested on his carrier, Garuda, and in another hand he twirled a lotus flower. These are personal characteristics of the personality of Godhead, Narayana. Text 41. His countenance was distinguished by cheeks that enhanced the beauty of his alligator-shaped pendants, which outshone lightning. His nose was prominent, and his head was covered with a gem-studded crown. A charming necklace hung between his stout arms, and his neck was adorned with the gem known by the name Kaustuba. Text 42. The exquisite beauty of Narayana, being many times magnified by the intelligence of his devotees, was so attractive that it defeated the pride of the goddess of fortune in being the most beautiful. My dear demigods, the devotee who thus manifested himself is worshipable by me, by Lord Shiva, and by all of you. The sages regarded him with unsated eyes and joyously bowed their heads at his lotus feet. Purport. The beauty of the Lord was so enchanting that it could not be sufficiently described. The goddess of fortune is supposed to be the most beautiful sight within the spiritual and material creations of the Lord. She has a sense of being the most beautiful, yet her beauty was defeated when the Lord appeared. In other words, the beauty of the goddess of fortune is secondary in the presence of the Lord. In the words of Vaishnava poets, it is said that the Lord's beauty is so enchanting that it defeats hundreds of thousands of cupids. He is therefore called Madana Mohana. Excuse me, I'm doing a little editing over here. Yes. He is therefore called Madana Mohana. It is also described that the Lord sometimes becomes mad after the beauty of Radharani. Poets describe that under those circumstances, although Lord Krishna is Madana Mohana, he becomes Mananadaha, or enchanted by the beauty of Radharani. Actually, the Lord's beauty is super excellent, surpassing even the beauty of Lakshmi in Vaikuntha. The devotees of the Lord in the Vaikuntha planets want to see the Lord as the most beautiful. But the devotees in Gokula or Krishna Loka want to see Radharani as more beautiful than Krishna. The adjustment is that the Lord, being Bhaktavatsala, or one who wants to please his devotees, assumes such features so that devotees like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other demigods may be pleased. Here also, for the devotee sages, the Kumaras, the Lord appeared in his most beautiful feature, and they continued to see him without satiation and wanted to continue seeing him more and more. Text 43. When the breeze carrying the aroma of tulsi leaves from the toes of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead entered the nostrils of those sages, they experienced a change both in body and in mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman understanding. Purport. It appears from this verse that the four Kumaras were impersonalists or protagonists of the philosophy of monism, becoming one with the Lord. But as soon as they saw the Lord's features, their minds changed. In other words, the impersonalist who feels transcendental pleasure in striving to become one with the Lord is defeated when he sees the beautiful transcendental features of the Lord. Because of the fragrance of his lotus feet, carried by the air and mixed with the aroma of tulsi, their minds changed. Instead of becoming one with the Supreme Lord, they thought it wise to be devotees. Becoming a servitor of the lotus feet of the Lord is better than becoming one with the Lord. Text 44. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to them like the inside of a blue lotus, and the Lord's smile appeared to be a blossoming jasmine flower. After seeing the face of the Lord, the sages were fully satisfied, and when they wanted to see him further, they looked upon the nails of his lotus feet, which resembled rubies. Thus they viewed the Lord's transcendental body again and again, and so they finally achieved meditation on the Lord's personal feature. Text 45. This is the form of the Lord, which is meditated upon by the followers of the yoga practice. And it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It is not imaginary, but factual, as proved by great yogis. The Lord is full in 8 kinds of achievement, but for others, these achievements are not possible in full perfection. Purport. The success of the yoga process is very nicely described here. It is specifically mentioned that the form of the Lord, as four-handed Narayana, is the object of meditation for the followers of Yoga Marg. In the modern age, there are so many so-called yogis who do not target their meditation on the four-handed Narayana form. Some of them try to meditate on something impersonal or void, but that is not approved by the great yogis who follow the standard method. The real Yoga Marg process is to control the real Yoga Marg process is to control the senses, sit in a solitary and sanctified place, and meditate on the four-handed form of Narayana, as decorated as described in this chapter, as he appeared before the 4 sages. This Narayana form is Krishna's expansion. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement, which is now spreading, is the real, topmost process of yoga practice. Krishna consciousness is the highest yoga performance by trained devotional yogis. Despite all the allurement of yoga practice, the 8 kinds of yogic perfections are hardly achievable by the common man. But here it is described that the Lord, who appeared before the 4 sages, is himself full of all 8 of those perfections. The highest Yoga Marg process is to concentrate the mind 24 hours a day on Krishna. This is called Krishna consciousness. The yoga system, as described in Srimad-Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, or as recommended in the Patanjali yoga system, is different from the nowadays practiced Hatha Yoga, as it is generally understood in the Western countries. Real yoga practice is to control the senses, and after such control is established, to concentrate the mind on the Narayana form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, and all the other Vishnu forms, with 4 hands decorated with conch, lotus, club, and wheel, are plenary expansions of Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, it is recommended that one meditate upon the form of the Lord. To practice concentration of the mind, one has to sit with the head and the back in a straight line, and one must practice in a secluded place, sanctified by a sacred atmosphere. The yogi should observe the rules and regulations of brahmacharya to strictly live a life of self-restraint and celibacy. One cannot practice yoga in a congested city, living a life of extravagancy, including unrestricted sex indulgence and adultery of the tongue. Yoga practice necessitates controlling the senses, and the beginning of sense control is to control the tongue. One who can control the tongue can also have control over the other senses. One cannot allow the tongue to take all kinds of forbidden food and drink, and at the same time advance in the practice of yoga. It is very regrettable. It is a very regrettable fact that many unauthorized so-called yogis come to the Western countries and exploit people's inclination towards yoga practice. Such unauthorized yogis even dare to say publicly that one can indulge in the habit of drinking and at the same time practice meditation. 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna recommended yoga practice to Arjuna, but Arjuna frankly expressed his inability to follow the stringent rules and regulations of the yoga system. One should be very practical in every field of activities and should not waste his valuable time in practicing useless gymnastic feats in the name of yoga. Real yoga is to search out the four-handed supersoul within one's heart and see him perpetually in meditation. Such continued meditation is called samadhi, and the object of this meditation is the four-handed Narayana with bodily decorations, as described in this chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam. If, however, one wants to meditate upon something void or impersonal, it will take a very long time before he achieves success in yoga practice. We cannot concentrate our mind on something void or impersonal. Real yoga is to fix the mind on the form of the Lord, the four-handed Narayana, who is sitting in everyone's heart. By meditation, one can understand that God is seated within one's heart. Even if one does not know it, God is seated within the heart of everyone. Not only is he seated in the heart of the human being, but he is also within the hearts of cats and dogs. Bhagavad Gita certifies this fact by the declaration of the Lord, Ishwarak Sarvabhutanam Riddhishe. The Ishwara, the supreme controller of the world, is seated in the heart of everyone. Not only is he in everyone's heart, but he is also present within the atom. No place is vacant or devoid of the presence of the Lord. That is the statement of Ishopanishad. God is present everywhere, and his right of proprietorship applies to everything. The feature of the Lord by which he is present everywhere is called Paramatma. Atma means the individual soul, and Paramatma means the individual supersoul. I'll read that again. Atma means the individual soul, and Paramatma means the individual supersoul. Both Atma and Paramatma are individual persons. The difference between Atma and Paramatma is that the Atma, or the soul, is present only in a particular body, whereas the Paramatma is present everywhere. In this connection, the example of the sun is very nice. An individual person may be situated in one place, but the sun, even though a similar individual entity, is present on the head of every individual person. In Bhagavad Gita, this is explained. Therefore, even though the qualities of all entities, including the Lord, are equal, the supersoul is different from the individual soul by quantitative power of expansion. The Lord, or the supersoul, can expand himself into millions of different forms, whereas the individual soul cannot do so. The Supersoul, being seated in everyone's heart, can witness everyone's activities, past, present, and future. In the Upanishads, the Supersoul is described as being seated with the individual soul as a friend and witness. As a friend, the Lord is always anxious to get back his friend, the individual soul, and bring him back home, back to Godhead. As a witness, he is the bestower of all benedictions, and he endows each individual with the result of his actions. The Supersoul gives the individual soul all facilities to achieve whatever he desires to enjoy in this material world. Suffering is a reaction to the living entity's propensity to try to lord it over the material world. But the Lord instructs his friend, the individual soul, who is also his son, to give up all other engagements and simply surrender unto him for perpetual bliss and an eternal life full of knowledge. This is the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita, the most authorized and widely read book on all varieties of yoga. Thus, the last word of Bhagavad Gita is the last word in the perfection of yoga. What a purport! What a purport! It is stated, and it's still going on, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita that a person who is always absorbed in Krishna consciousness is the topmost yogi. What is Krishna consciousness? As the individual soul is present by his consciousness throughout his entire body, so the Supersoul, or Paramatma, is present throughout the whole creation by superconsciousness. This superconscious energy is imitated by the individual soul who has limited consciousness. I can understand what is going on within my limited body, but I cannot feel what is going on in another's body. I am present throughout my body by my consciousness, but my consciousness is not present in another's body. The Supersoul, or Paramatma, however, being present everywhere and within everyone, is also conscious of everyone's existence. The theory that the Lord and the Supersoul are one is not acceptable because it is not confirmed by authoritative Vedic literature. The individual soul's consciousness cannot act in superconsciousness. This superconsciousness can be achieved, however, by dovetailing individual consciousness with the consciousness of the Supreme. This dovetailing process is called surrender, or Krishna consciousness. From the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, we learn very clearly that Arjuna in the beginning did not want to fight with his brothers and relatives. But after understanding Bhagavad Gita, he dovetailed his consciousness with the superconsciousness of Krishna. He was then in Krishna consciousness. A person in full Krishna consciousness acts by the dictation of Krishna. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, dictation is received through the transparent medium of the spiritual master. When one is sufficiently trained and acts in submissive faith and love for Krishna, under the direction of this bona fide spiritual master, the dovetailing process becomes more firm and accurate. This stage of devotional service by the devotee in Krishna consciousness is the most perfect stage of the yoga system. At this stage, Krishna, or the Supersoul, dictates from within, while from without, the devotee is helped by the spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Krishna. From within, he helps the devotee as Chaitya, for he is seated within the heart of everyone. Understanding that God is seated within everyone's heart is not, however, sufficient. One has to be acquainted with God from both within and without, and one must take dictation from within and without to act in Krishna consciousness. This is the highest perfectional stage of the human form of life and the topmost perfection of all yoga. For a perfect yogi, there are 8 kinds of super achievements. One can become lighter than air. One can become smaller than the atom. One can become bigger than a mountain. One can achieve whatever he desires. One can control like the Lord, and so on. But when one rises to the perfectional stage of receiving dictation from the Lord, that is greater than any stage of material achievements above mentioned. The breathing exercise of the yoga system, which is generally practiced, is just the beginning. Meditation on the Supersoul is just another step forward. But to obtain direct contact with the Supersoul and take direction from him is the highest perfectional stage. The breathing exercises of meditation practice were very difficult, even 5,000 years ago. Otherwise, Arjuna would not have rejected the proposal of Krishna that he adopt this system. This age of Kali is called the fallen age. In this age, people in general are short-living and very slow to understand self-realization or spiritual life. They are mostly unfortunate, and therefore if someone is a little bit interested in self-realization, he is likely to be misguided by so many frauds. The only way to realize the perfect stage of yoga is to follow the principles of Bhagavad Gita as practiced by Lord Chaitanya. This is the simplest and highest perfection of yoga practice. Lord Chaitanya demonstrated this Krishna consciousness yoga system in a practical manner simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna as prescribed in Vedanta, Srimad-Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and many important Puranas. The largest number of Indians follow this yoga process. And in the United States, it is gradually spreading in many cities. It is very easy and practical for this age, especially for those who are serious about success in yoga. No other process of yoga can be successful in this age. The meditation process was possible in the golden age, Satya Yuga, because people in that age used to live for hundreds and thousands of years. If one wants success in practical yoga practice, it is advised that he take to the chanting of the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and he will actually feel himself making progress. In Bhagavad Gita, this practice of Krishna consciousness is prescribed as Raja Vidya, or the king of all education, or the king of all erudition. Those who have taken to this most sublime bhakti yoga system, who practice devotional service and transcendental love of Krishna, can testify to its happy and easy execution. The 4 sages, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara, also became attracted by the features of the Lord and the transcendental aroma of the dust of his lotus feet, as already described in verse 43. Yoga necessitates controlling the senses, and Bhakti Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, is the process of purifying the senses. When the senses are purified, they are automatically controlled. One cannot stop the activities of the senses by artificial means, but if one purifies the senses by engaging in the service of the Lord, the senses not only can be controlled from rubbish engagement, but can be engaged in the Lord's transcendental service as aspired to by the four sages, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara. Krishna consciousness is not, therefore, a manufactured concoction of the speculative mind. It is the process enjoined in Bhagavad Gita, Manmana Mamabad Bhakto Majjaji Mam Namaskuru. Well, there's a little, introductory, course in yoga. You just read that purport to your yoga students and they'll get a really clear idea. I don't know how many will be there after you finish that purport. How many pages was that purport? Curious. It's hard to read page numbers in the database. Okay, that was 45. We're going to stop there, by the way. We've been reading for more than an hour. Pretty good. 45. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.5 pages. Long purport. I mean, not only was the whole philosophy of yoga given in that purport, but the whole philosophy of life was given in that purport.
There's so much hope.
Huh?
There was so much hope.
Oh, there's more than hope. There's love.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to stop there and open up the doors of the hearts of the devotees and for reflections and questions, reflections, whatever's stuck in your mind. And that was a really, really beautiful reading. That last purport was something else.
Yeah, very special.
Very special purport. All right. The ball's in your court, kids. I got my little, bumblebee.
I can't hide in my lounge room now.
There you
Because
go.
I'm here.
There you go.
Oh, you want me to hold that?
Yes.
Well, first of
This
all,
is Vilas Mindra,
Hare
who's
Krishna.
visiting us from Sydney, as I mentioned when she came in. But that was a long time ago after that 5-page purport. Just in case everyone forgot, she's here. Dr. Matt's here from Houston, so we got real international gallery over here of devotees. Go ahead.
First of all, I was thinking about how poetic Srimad-Bhagavatam is, with the descriptions of the Lord as the Kumaras were seeing him, and it's so poetic. And I do have a question, but this is just a little reflection. Now that I have a chance to say it, because I'm not in my lounge room, I'm here. It's so nice to slow down and to read every word of the Bhagavatam, because I didn't realize how many wonderful words were in the Bhagavatam. And over the last, I've been following since April. You were in the 11th canto when I started following, and you went through from the 11th, 12th to the Bhagavad Gita, and then started again. And for me, it's answered so many questions that I had in the back of my mind, just by reading the verses in Prabhupada's purports. And it's given me a lot of faith in Prabhupada, in feeling very safe in his shelter because of this reading every word and understanding what's here in these purports. So thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Well, what can I say? You just made my day. Thank you. Thank you.
That's
That was
nice.
well put. It was very eloquently put. well put and eloquently put. And I want to say that before I started doing the live streaming, I've been reading every day for 5 years. But at the beginning when I started, I was emphasizing the number of pages I was reading every day. Because I made a vow to do 41 pages a day so that I could read the Bhagavatam within a year and get a more, I don't know, I've been reading these books for 46 years, but it was a long time since I had read them systematically all the way through cover to cover, because I was editing books for many, many years here in this room and other places. But once I started doing this systematic reading, I wanted to get through it as fast as I could, and I was promoting that idea. But, it was before, actually, I started doing the live stream reading, but not that much before. Last year, I started to concentrate more on the quality of the reading. Like you said, if you read it, just slow it down a little bit, and more meditative, read more meditative, more clearly, and give the devotees' minds an opportunity to pause in places and get their help. This helps the devotees to enter, And so since I started doing the live stream, I've been more conscious of this, and I'm actually practicing for when I go back to Houston, which is going to be in about a month. And I'm going to go back there, and I've been selected by the BBT trustees to be the narrator for the whole Bhagavatam and the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita for the official BBT audiobook of the same. So it was very meaningful what you said, and just the knowledge that devotees are out there and getting daily these readings is so wonderful. So go ahead with your realization, with your question.
I just want to say one more thing that I was, as you were speaking then, about this reading out loud and sharing and reading together is, I've just noticed in my own life, and others have confirmed it in theirs, the effect of technology on us, and that a lot of us are finding it very difficult to read a book now. And I used to love reading. I would read every day, and I've read the entire Bhagavatam and all of Prabhupada's books, and I used to look forward to the next day to have that time to read again. And in the last few years I haven't been able to read. I just haven't, I feel like something in my brain has changed.
It is the technology.
Yeah, and other friends have said that to me. It's like, as soon as we start reading a page, we just nod off. We can't, we're finding it hard to actually slow down and read. So I'm finding that this, where we're listening, where somebody's speaking it and we're listening, that I'm actually able to engage with it more, because I'm listening, it's being slowed down, you're stopping at important points, people are reflecting. It's actually, I feel like, how I used to feel when I was reading the Bhagavatam and relishing it. It's giving me that taste and even more now.
Reviving.
Yeah,
and it's the process of hearing.
Yes.
That's the essence.
Yeah.
That's why it's called Shruti.
Yeah. So I think both, like I also have a small group that meets once a week and we read together.
Very good.
And some of them are very new. And I think both this together with distributing books, but having an opportunity for people to come and read together, it works really well. And I think it's partly because of what technology has done to our brains.
Absolutely.
We need to sit together and read.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you read my offering, the 2018 offering?
No. Do you know why? Because I was looking forward to it, because you kept talking about that you were going to do it. And then when it came to the day, the Vasa Puja, I think you said that it was being emailed out to the list. And I didn't know how to get on the list. So
well, you came to the source now, so you're on. If you want to be on the list, you get on the list.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll send it to you.
Okay.
You have my phone number. So
Yeah.
you text me your email number,
Okay.
your email address, okay?
And
I'll
as-
send it to you. I'll send it to you right away.
And the devotees that I've shared this site with, Bhagavata Shraya Prabhu shared this with me. And then, I think I just found it on his Facebook page because he'd been liking it. So I thought, let me listen. And then I've been sharing it with friends and with my group that meets on once a week. So people are enjoying it. And because our lives are so busy, we can start listening while we're driving home and then continue. It's recorded every day.
Yeah, so important.
So, yeah. Is there time for a question?
Yes.
Because I know
Yes.
I had a few questions, but I'm just going to pick one. And that was one thing that struck me was it's hard for me to imagine a place where there's complete harmony because we're so surrounded by disharmony. That's the world around us now. But what also struck me was it was such a slight error, I guess you'd say. And in that purport, Prabhupada said it's instant. That as soon as we are, I can't remember the word, was it disharmonious or out of harmony? Or there's error, he said it's immediate, that fall. So I don't want to start a big topic because I know that's could be a big topic, but it just struck me that how easy it was for us to come here, and it seems so hard to remember Krishna, to get out of this situation. So, yeah.
Well, there's two parts of your question. The first part has to do with what harmony is. Because we have a tendency to, when we think of harmony, we think of everything being one, homogeneous, everyone agreeing with everyone else. But the fact is that the nature of a living being is it's an individual. The Lord is an individual, and the individual living beings are individual. And therefore, no two individuals can think completely alike. So there's always some variety. And there's always some, it's not disharmony exactly, but it's difference of opinion or difference of, there's a wonderful purport I can refer you to read, in which Srila Prabhupada directly addresses this. It is 1972, February 4th. It's a letter to Atreya Rishi, and we call it the Utopia letter because it advises us not to think in terms of there being a utopia, because it's impersonal. Utopia idea is impersonal. Everybody's got to be the same. We hear that in Vaikuntha, everybody has four arms and they all look the same, and the only difference is a tuft of hair. But Sanatana Goswami gives other. Could you turn this around a little bit so that people? Yeah, thank you. The fact that we get to Vaikuntha. Now we're talking about Vaikuntha, not Goloka Vrindavan. Now we're talking about Vaikuntha. In Vaikuntha, the perfection is reached by meditation on the Lord, and this is what's happening with the four Kumaras. They were, this is a little difficult to understand, a little subtle, but I'll give you some ideas from our acharyas, which will help fill in some details and perhaps deepen your understanding of what happened here. The first thing is that they were meditating on the form of the Lord. Remember when they first came, when in the beginning of the description, it's described how the Kumaras were actually meditating on the form of the Lord. Now, then later on it said that they were actually impersonalists. But in this case, impersonalists doesn't mean that they don't believe in the form of the Lord. Impersonalists in this state means that there's no active service to the Lord. They're seeing the Lord in the heart, but they've never seen the Lord outside. And it was very significant that the fragrance of the tulsi leaves on the Lord's lotus feet, and the fragrance of the Lord's body entered the nostrils and made them immediately pure devotees. So that's one thing. That's one aspect. Now, from the Vaikuntha Wallace, Jai and Vijay, it's very difficult to understand. But there's a commentary by one of our acharyas. I just don't remember the exact one, but it's there. I heard this from Gopi Paranadana Prabhu. And that is that within the hearts of the Vaikuntha servants, Jai and Vijay, there was an understanding of the Lord's desire to fight. And so from within their heart, there developed a desire to serve the Lord in that capacity. But you can't do that in Vaikuntha, because there's no fighting, that kind of fighting in Vaikuntha. There may be competition in that letter that I referred you to, 1972, February 4th, to Atreya Rishi. There Srila Prabhupada explains that even the gopis and cowherd boys, sometimes they will compete. They will run to catch Krishna, and well, I'm going to catch Krishna first. No, you're not. I'm going to get Krishna first. Or the gopis will think, oh, she looked so nice and Krishna liked her, so I'm going to look nicer so that Krishna will like. So there's a kind of competition, but there's no malice.
Right.
So how this come about can only be explained by the Lord's direct mercy. How there was some malice. The fall from Vaikuntha, which is possible, it is possible. This event shows that it's possible, but there's a controversy in philosophy whether or not it's possible to fall from Vaikuntha. It is possible, because the liberated soul still has freedom. It's not that we're in a prison when we go to Vaikuntha. It's not that you're forced to stay there, therefore you can't fall down. But the love of Krishna is so wonderful, and the atmosphere is so wonderful, that most don't. But it is possible, because the soul, compared to Krishna, is very tiny, and therefore there's an opportunity to, with that smallness, and us being sentient beings in parts of Krishna, we have parts of Krishna's qualities, but very infinitesimal parts. So the Lord has independence, full independence. So we have limited independence, infinitesimal amount of independence. And with that independence, we can choose to use it or not to use it properly. It has to be there. Love cannot exist unless that independence is complete, unless it's always there. So it is that misuse of independence, and the first fall is so subtle. This is subtle with what's happening with Jai God, but it's even more subtle when a person comes to this material world from the spiritual world first time. And once they come here and go back, then it's only time you choose to do that again is because if the Lord wanted you to go on a mission. So it's combination. There were a couple of events that happened. One was that Lakshmi came out once, and we don't know the detail, but there is commentary by our acharyas that say that there was an exchange between Lakshmi and Jai and Vijay that displeased her. Somehow or other, I don't know what the detail is, but there was something the exchange that went between Jai and Vijay and the goddess of fortune, which displeased her. So that was one thing, And then there's this desire within the heart coming from them to serve him in a certain way, and the Lord facilitated the whole thing.
Right. That's why they said So please bless us that we won't forget you.
Yes, exactly,
Mm.
exactly.
And they never forgot him.
And they never forgot him.
Mm.
They just duked it out with him a few times to give him a little pleasure. And as they were falling, they were given the opportunity to choose 7 births as devotees or 3 births as demons.
Mm.
And they chose 3 births because they could come back sooner.
Mm.
So anyway, these are the intricacies of spiritual relationships and the wonderful spiritual atmosphere. So, yes, Bhakta Matt has a reflection.
I had a lot of reflections, but I had to choose one. In the, the 42nd verse, it said, the exquisite beauty of Narayana being many times magnified by the intelligence of his devotees. And that struck me because anyone that's really, you can generally tell about a person, about based on the people that surround that person, you know. So it was interesting that that was an attribute of his beauty, was the quality of the devotees that were surrounding him. So I can just imagine that scene, and you kind of come into that atmosphere and see these exalted beings, and you just want to be a part of it.
I'll give you an extra detail. One extra detail, very wonderful, by the way. That's because the relationship is there between the Lord and his devotees. And the reason why the Lord's beauty is enhanced and increased by the association of the devotees is because the devotees are always trying to please him, and he's always trying to please them. So when they see him happy, they become more attractive and more beautiful and more whatever. And when he sees them like that, then he becomes more beautiful. And there's a constant competition like this. Who's going to please who the most? And as they do, they become more beautiful. And that goes on forever. And it's inconceivable. It's inconceivable. But that's the relationship between the beauty of the Lord and the association of the devotees. And now I think we're going to shut it down for the night. Were there any? Okay, so far, but we're still live. Very good. Thank you, everyone. I mean, it's like Vilas Manjari just came out of the world into here, into our little environment here from Sydney, Australia, and is giving us such, like I said, she made our day, giving us details of how devotees are out there listening to these readings and reflections and are inspired. I especially enjoyed and relished, I guess you could say, her point about how this style of reading and the way it's being done is reawakening devotees' taste for reading, which they're lost due to the influence of the technology and the technological age and the speed at which everyone has to move in order to just maintain oneself in this material world now. And it's becoming so hellish that it's hard. So, thank you very much for coming. And we look forward to seeing you again. And I will always remember this event. Very, very big impression. The things that you said were so inspiring. And I mean, I'm obviously already aspired to do this. But the reason I am is to please the devotees and remind the devotees that Prabhupada is present within his books. When he was asked what will happen when you die, he said, I'm not going to die. I will live forever in my books. Prabhupada, he said again towards the end, if you want to know me, read my books. So by reading Prabhupada's books, especially out loud like this, in the company of other devotees, we associate with Prabhupada directly, and we get that taste that is so sweet and precious and unique.
That's why this is so valuable.
Yes.
That's what we experience through your readings.
Thank you so much. Shesha, one of the GBC men, came to Houston. His daughter married one of the devotees in Houston, so he comes there to visit sometimes. And he came to one of my readings. And afterwards he told the devotees, it's not that he's reading to you, he's giving you his taste. So be it. So be it. So will it continue forever as long as I'm in this body? Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I made a vow every day for the rest of my life. And now you're just giving me so much inspiration and so much strength to do it. Hare Krishna.
I'm so happy if I can do anything to reciprocate.
Hare Krishna.
That's why I've just come off the plane.
Yes, I'm
traveling 2 days from Sydney, and I was over there, so I've got to get there.
I'm amazed.
The taxi didn't come. We all got somebody to come and do
I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
All right, thank you. And thank you to all of you out in cyberspace. All glories to the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. The four Kamaras ki jai. Jai. Vaikuntha Nath ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Thank you. Hare Krishna.